The Empire of Chesabon, vast, proud, unrelenting, its banners flew proudly across Sachea, an expansive continent at the center of the world, from the frozen reaches in the north to the sun-baked mercantile cities of the south, from the windswept plains of the east to the jagged citadels of the west. The Empire's reach even extended into the ancient Moriorian forest, home of the elusive elves, and deep beneath the earth, into the stone-hued halls of the Northern Star dwarves. Beastmen, orcs, golems, druids, dragons, no matter the race, all bend the knee. At times, its iron legions were invincible. But everything good has an end. The year is 990 of the imperial calendar. Emperor Constant XI met an untimely death. His newborn son Eskina II succeeded to the throne. However, Grand Duke Averio of Caedros held the real power. Averio hollowed out the already waning empire from within, selling governorships to the highest bidders, stripping the wealth from the common people, replacing the competent officials with inept sycophants. Meanwhile, Averio's treasury swelled in size, and those who spoke out vanished. As Averio corruption ran rampant within the imperial court, the empire's grip on the outer provinces began to slip. Sensing the void left by a weakening central authority, ambitious nobles and lords seized their moment. One by one, they broke away, severing ties with the Crown Throne and declaring independence. Across Sergia, fractured kingdom and sovereign states began to take shape, carved from the bones of the once unified empire. Yet not all had abandoned the empire. Across the fractured lands, many still rallied to its cause. Though scattered, these imperial loyalists kept their oath to the emperor. Soon they would clash with the breakaway rams. Ambition met tradition, rebellion met order, and thus began the Great War of the Crowds. As the powerless Emperor Eskina II looked out from the palace high windows, the young ruler pondered the fate of the empire he had inherited. To the southwest of the empire, the harsh wildlands hostile to humans was the home of the demihumans, the wolfkin, bearkin, centaurs, merfolks, and others. For centuries, they had endured the empire's oppressive rule. Under Regent Averio's reign, the empire's cruelty reached new heights, pushing the demihumans to their breaking point. In the Wolfkin fortress of Lycaia, Fandrel, the fierce chieftain of the Wolfkin, killed the rapacious imperial governor of Noxus province. And founded the demi-human states of Scholasika. Through diplomacy and force, Noxborn swiftly expanded its territorial extent. In the spring of 2002, Fandral led his army south and defeated the combined force of the merfolk tribes of the Southern Sea and the hot-tempered Centaur clans of the Open Plain in the decisive Battle of the Claws. This event and the subsequent unification of those influential tribes under Noxborn propelled the young nation's fame to new heights. Word of its strength and unity spread quickly, drawing countless demi-human races to its banner. In spring 2004, Noxborn took his boldest step yet. An army led by General Grimnar Barebone of the Bearkin, the trusted right-hand man of Fandral, marched on Durinium, the stone wall capital of the Turtlekin people. Before that, the King of the Turtles had refused all offers of alliance from Noxborn, choosing instead to remain loyal to the crumbling empire. To Fandral, this was a betrayal to the demihumans, a betrayal that warranted the gravest punishment. The Turtlekin, as slow as they were wise, their stubborn way of thinking was marked by unwavering patience, discipline, and unparalleled defense. Durinium reflected their nature to the extreme, a fortress like no other, built into the veld cliff of a jagged coastline. Its towering black stone walls were surrounded by vast bodies of water and huge swathes of swampland. The Turtle believed their sanctuary was beyond any conqueror's reach. The army of demihumans, 30,000 strong, comprised of wolves, bears, and centaur warriors. While the defenders had 80,000 men. However, most was conscripts, being volunteers among the male populace of the settlement. What ensued was a grueling siege that lasted for 2 weeks. Thousands of Noxborn men threw themselves against the walls of Durinium like rising tides against a cliff. Turtlekin defenders made full use of Durinium's unique location and their natural mastery over amphibious warfare to repel the superior Noxborn forces time after time. Eventually, the far more numerous Noxborn overwhelmed the whited turtle soldiers and broke through the gates. Many turtle citizens evacuated to the royal fleet, but King Turtle and his son remained behind. If Durinium falls, so will they. After hours of fighting, The exhausted father and son duo was cut down. The fortress of Durinium was captured. The remaining Turtle-King who could not flee were enslaved by the Wolf-King. The royal fleet carrying the Turtle-King refugees escaped northward, seeking shelter in the yet untouched settlements of the Loyalists. The fall of Durinium sent tremors to the western provinces of the Empire. News of the disaster reached Presa, the heart of the state of Adentia, the Empire's central stronghold on the western frontier. Presa was home to the legendary Celestial clan, led by a pure-blooded Celestial, Astrava, the last of his kind, who had walked the earth for over 3,000 years. Over 1,200 years ago, still wandering Astrava found love with a mortal woman. The couple settled in the obscure Nasquet Valley, founding a humble village where they could live peacefully. Over the centuries, that quiet settlement would soon grow into a prosperous city, Prasium. From their union came many children, half celestial, half human, whose descendants would go on to found the Celestial clan. Each generation inherited a fragment of K's divine power, manifested in the form of lightning magic, a force capable of both creation and destruction.
That
1,000 years ago, it was during the time that the founding emperor of the Chesibon Empire went on a conquest that spanned the entire length of the continent. He chanced upon the hidden haven of K and his family. Two great men did not clash. Instead, they spoke long into the night about power, purpose, and peace. By dawn, a pact was forged. K was named the Celestial Duke, Lord of the Nasquet Valley, granted full autonomy over his lands as guardians of the Nasquet Valley and its surrounding lands. The Celestial clan had long upheld peace and order in the region, but the Turtle Kingdom's tragic fate struck deep. The shaken K felt deep remorse at the passing of his 500-year-old friend, King Turtle. The Duke decided to lend his clan's strength to the imperial governor of Nogongisian province, Cairo Garcia, for the first time in so many years. The Celestial clan sought to enter the war. From Prasium, a host of 20,000 imperial soldiers marched southward, determined to crush the rising threat, catching the occupying forces by surprise. The Adentians laid siege to Durinium and swiftly reclaimed it. One month later, the imperial army confronted a vast Nox-born host on the plain of Gwei, led once again by the formidable Grimnar Bearborn. demihumans charge, rushing into the imperial legions with raw, primal fury. Despite the discipline of the imperial light, demihumans' innate strength gave them an edge in combat. However, just as Grimna was certain of his victory, the sky turned. In a flash of ancient power, the lightning scrolls of Adentia were unleashed. Bolts of searing energy cascaded from the heavens, ripping through the Wolfkin ranks in devastating arcs. As if it was planned, Celestial clan members entered the fray. Moving with otherworldly grace, these half-celestials struck like falling stars, cutting down hundreds of Wolfkin warriors in mere moments. At the heart of the battlefield, the inevitable cast came. Kay Astrava, the eternal guardian of Adentia, met Grimna Barebone, the champion of the demihumans. The two most powerful beings on the field stood face to face, and with a single devastating strike, Kay severed the head of his foe. Grimna, who had not tasted defeat in decades, fell. His death ended the Wolfkin charge, sealing the day's victory. The Battle of Lightning, as later generation would call it, marked a pivotal turning point in the War of the Crowns. Seemingly unstoppable momentum of the demihumans was stopped cold on its track by an imperial host. For the first time since the war began, an organized and determined army from the Empire scored a decisive victory against a concentrated rebel force. It delivered a clear message to the rest of the complacent and conceited rebels. The Empire, though bruised, was far from broken. The War of the Crowns was far from over. It had only just begun. While the conflict between the demihumans and the Celestial clan raged in the south of Western Searcher, new unrest gathered in the north. At the northern head of the Great Schism Mountains, where the stone peaks fall away into highland pastures, lies Khotane, the realm of the Horse Lords. The Khotane clans lived in the saddle. Horsemanship was second nature. Children learned to ride before they could read. Even commoners fought as cavalry. In battle, Khotane riders fought as heavy cavalry, armored in bronze and steel, their horses clad in body, their charges breaking infantry lines like crashing avalanches. For centuries, they were revered as the continent's foremost riders, indispensable to every imperial army. Among these clans, none surpassed the Stratton. Their chieftain, Cornelius Stephen Crafted, was unlike any other, born 2 centuries before the Empire's expansion. Young Cornelius often followed his father, the clan chief, on the hunt. During one such expedition, they were ambushed by a rival tribe. His father was slain, and Cornelius, wounded, was driven into a mountain ravine where he fell into darkness. Teetering between life and death, he encountered the fabled Witch of Light, one of the 7 primordial witches. Covered in blinding light, she bestowed upon him immortality before vanishing without a chase. Cornelius returned to his people, unchained, deathless, and claimed the mantle of chief. Under Cornelius' rule, the clan flourished, soon rising as the strongest in Khotane and earning Emperors of Chasuble trust to oversee the realm. 997, as Averio's tyranny spread unchecked, the clan chiefs gathered at Presa Castle. There, the long-respected Cornelius Stephen Crafted was acclaimed as king, marking the birth of the kingdom of Presa. Khotane was not the only rider culture in the region. Farther north lay Bactania. Unlike the heavy cataphracts of their southern neighbor, the Bactrians, descendants of the old northern nomads, fought as sweep-like cavalry, renowned for speed and precision. They rode with unshackled freedom across the snow-swept expanse of Thandro. With the empire's decline, authority faltered in Foranaru, the imperial stronghold in Bactria. There, the governor, Erga Bagdonia, cast off his oaths and declared the kingdom of Bactria. Together, Bactria and Presa came to dominate over half of northwestern Serbia. In the summer of 2002, Cornelius paid lavish tribute to the enigmatic Dark Elves of Lowry Forest. In return, the elves granted passage to the Presian cavalry, permitting them to cross their guarded woods and launch a surprise assault against the Empire. At Cornelius' command, 38,000 riders under General Azaris swept into Imperial territory, marking the beginning of a devastating campaign. Presian's target was Scholasika, the capital of Castium. Should the fortress fall, the entire Castium province would be lost. The city was held by the 11th Legion, 10,000 strong, under Mistress Glycia III, First Lady of House Elysia, Holy Saint of the Imperial Church, Governor of Castium, and sister to the corrupt Grand Duke Averio. Unlike her older brother, Glycia was famed for piety, discipline, devotion to her people. Chosen from a young age, she endured growing training to assume the mantle of Saint of War, one of the 7 holy saints of the Imperial Church. By 20, Glycia had become one of the best fighters and tacticians in the Empire. When Glycia turned 28, a series of demonic calamities struck Castium province. From rifts unseen, hordes of fiends poured into the land, seizing villages, burning crops, and leaving once thriving settlements in ruin. The Imperial Church put forth Saint Glycia to Emperor Constans XI as the one capable of ending the crisis, and he entrusted her with a task. She crushed the demonic scourge in the decisive Battle of Astun Forest. From relative obscurity, saintess rose to fame across the empire. In recognition, the emperor named her governor of Castium and commander of the 11th Legion, charged with guarding Scholasika, repelling any new demonic threat, and preserving order in the region. Now in her 50s, still young, beautiful, and energetic as ever, the Saintess Glycia III swore to defend her lands against all foes. Presa encircled Scholasika, sealing the city on all sides and blocking it in hopes of starving the garrison into surrender. Outnumbered and pressed, Saint Glycia sent appeals to the southern loyalist states of Arcelon and Adentia. The first to answer was Hazel Kayaks of Arcelon, who dispatched his cousin, the veteran general Usal Kayaks, with 40,000 men. They encamped south of the present army, and for 2 tense weeks, the armies glared at one another. Garrison, loyalists, and rebels alike unwilling to risk the first strike. Within Scholasika, hunger and pestilence spread, claiming many lives. At last, with winter drawing near, Usokas moved. He attacked the present army in tandem with the 11th Legion, who sallied forth from the city. In the Battle of the Burning Fields, the rebels were crushed and routed. Soon after the victory, reinforcements from Ardentia arrived, led by the contemporary head of Celestial clan, Rachel Astava. With these fresh troops, a coalition force 45,000 strong was assembled, comprised of the 11th Legion, the Arsalon host, and the Ardentian army. Together, they marched north into Presa itself. The Loyalists stormed the crucial fortress of Durinium, butchering its defenders and clearing the road to the present heartland. From there, they advanced into Presa Castle, the seat of Cornelius himself. The siege dragged on for half a year. Starvation and disease permitted the castle. The situation grew so desperate, the proud riders resorted to eating their treacherous steeds. Still, the walls held, though Cornelius knew they could not endure much longer. With no allies remaining, Cornelius sought assistance from Bactania. However, King Berga Bogdonia refused, choosing instead to observe the siege and align with the empire. If Presa fell. Anticipating this, Cornelius ordered assassins in Ferranarum to kill both Berga and his heir, Bosok Bogdonia, in their sleep. His agents then installed Bosok's son, Nuenu Bogdonia, on the throne. The new king declared his unwavering support for Presa. Under his name, the Bactanian royal army set out. Swift as the northern winds, they descended on Linium, crushing his unsuspecting garrison before galloping at full speed toward Presa. Their pace was so relentless that the Loyalist coalition remained blind to the disaster at Linium and to the storm of horsemen hurling down upon them. On a foggy summer morning, as the Empire's men pressed the siege, Presa was teetered on the brink of collapse. Then, atop a hill overlooking the battlefield, a gleam of steel caught the morning sun. Out of the mist, the Bactanian host revealed itself. 20,000 riders in shining mail, spears held high, their war cries rolling down the slopes like thunder. The coalition camp erupted into confusion as the imperial men grasped the situation. Panic spread like wildfire. Generals shouted and gestured desperately, trying to stabilize the front line, but it was too late. The cavalry of Bactania charged down from the hill and crashed into disorganized infantry. From the fortress, Cornelius and his exhausted men burst out of the gates. Trapped between the fortress and the cavalry, the loyalist army collapsed. What started as a siege turned into a massacre. The land outside Presa turned into a killing field. In the aftermath, General Anelius Vacoran of the 11th Legion, General Uso Kayaks of Astalon, Rachio Astrava, clan head of the Celestial clan, and over 20,000 loyalists lay dead beneath the bloody walls of Presa. With the near annihilation of the 11th Legion, as well as other loyalist forces at Presa, Cassium's situation turned precarious. Seeing the hopeless situation, Lysia decided to travel to the imperial city of Trabzon to meet her brother, asking for more reinforcements. However, the road to the capital was blocked by many rebel states. The saintess knew the road before her would be one of peril and trial. She gathered 8 trusted companions. These 8 heroes are Praetorian Guard Adrian, one of the youngest ever to ascend the rank of Praetorian, the most elite of the Imperial Legions. Though capable of achieving higher ranks, he chose to serve the saintess as bodyguard and servant. Seba the Iron Eye, a Scholasican levy who rose from obscurity by his bow. Tempus Austerian, once the Knight Captain of the Legion, a hardened veteran who towered over both friend and foe. For decades, he had fought at Lysia's side. Aster Exarch of Scholasika, a man of profound faith from the western branch of the Imperial Church, he devoted himself to the saint. Though skilled with spear and forest craft, his true gift lay in his voice and spirit, for he could rally the hearts of men, calling them to the Legion's banner with words. Astasian the Sorceress, a prodigy in magic. Her master was one of the most powerful sorcerers of the continent, Besivi Baka, the Flame Emperor of Buddha. Upon completing her rites in the capital, she wandered the world in pursuit of mastery. In Scholasika, she found her purpose, joining the saintess retinue. Aeschylean the Physician, a man of unmatched healing art, he swore an oath to save even the dying, to turn back death itself where others would yield. Aderos and Edros, the Celestial Twins, the 21st generation members of the Celestial clan. These twin brothers were mischievous rascallions, bound to each other by blood and magic alike. At 16, they tricked their way into the Legion's ranks, fooling officers and captains alike. They were discovered by Lysia, and instead of punishing them, she took them in. Together they were called the Fellowship of the Virgin. Leaving Scholasika in the care of her adopted daughter Ilia, whom she had raised for 10 years, the saintess and her companions departed quietly at night, taking only essential supplies. Disguised as refugees, they traveled east to a remote hill, where the Asen Riders, the notorious eastern nomads, whose horsemanship surpassed even the Courtians, awaited to escort them. Unaware of their true identities, within the city, no one knew the saintess had left. From the tallest tower, Ilia watched her mother disappear into the night, fearing it might be their final farewell. One year later, having recovered from the previous battles, Presa returned and besieged Scholasika once more. This time, the attackers bribed a centurion named Theodorus, promising him Scholasika's governorship and Ilia's hand in marriage. With his help, the gates of Scholasika were opened. Fire spread through the city, and riders stormed the citadel, killing everyone they found. In her chamber, the brave Ilia made her final stand, defending herself against Theodorus and his men. Yet fate twisted cruelly. The Brazians stormed in, killing Ilia before she could survive the night, and their spears found Theodorus as well, adding the traitor's treachery. Many miles away, the young Praetorian guard Adrian, riding with the Arsan riders, felt a sudden chill. He stopped, looking back, chest aching, and tears streaming down his face. He knew in that moment that Ilia, his lover, was gone. Biting back his grip, he turned forward, silently swearing that one day, vengeance would be his. World was tearing Sergia apart. Once, the Empire of Chasuble stood unchallenged, its armies and provinces stretching across the continent. But now, rebellion spread like wildfire. Kings, chieftains, and warlords carved out realms of their own, and even the Empire's most loyal provinces were restless. As the War of the Crown commenced, the fate of the continent would hinge not only on armies and generals, but on powerful relics from a forgotten age. The 13 imperial arms. During the reign of the 21st Emperor Harold I, the Empire of Chasuble reached its peak in military strength and technological advancements. To display the Empire's prowess, he authorized the creation of the 13 imperial arms. These relics serve as bulwarks of the Empire, defending it from threats. The arms were crafted from the rarest materials and oddities collected from across the realm. Master-driven blacksmiths forged them, while high elves impaled each with potent magic. Each artifact had unique characteristics and supernatural abilities. For a time, they stood as symbols of the Empire's unquestioned dominance. But time and war took their toll. By the era of the War of the Crown, only 7 of the arms remained in imperial hands. The others had been lost, stolen, or seized by the rebels. For Averio, the Empire's strongman, and Escena II, the young emperor, parry one at all times. Now, with Averio and Escena attempting to crush the continent's growing rebellion, the stage was set for a brutal contest. While earlier episodes examined the regional conflicts in Western Sergia, we now turn to the wider political map of the continent. As we know, multiple rebel states were established as the Empire's authority weakened. To combat this, the Empire, headed by Averio and the young Emperor Escena II, had put ludicrous bounties on the most powerful, prominent, and dangerous rebel leaders. But who were these men bold enough to defy the Empire? Let's take a closer look. Among these were Cornelius Captain of Presa and Fendrel of Noxborn, figures are rare familiar to us, but many others emerged as major players in the struggle. Gonzalis, Jewel King of Mithril Kingdom, once the Duke of the Mithril region, his rise was driven not just by ambitions, but by his deep hatred of the Empire. The Mithril region was one of the most economically significant territories on the continent. Even before rebelling, its vast mines yielded mithril ore, a rare and prized material for its exceptional strength. Outside the dwarves, only mithril could supply it on a large scale. This monopoly brought wealth and leverage unmatched by other dukedoms. When Gonzalis declared independence and established the Mithril Kingdom, he secured control over this vital resource. The new kingdom quickly became one of the wealthiest nations on the continent. Nuso Ravenous, the 34th chief of the Tepiras, ruled a land renowned for its martial discipline and warrior culture. Inspired by the ideas of strength and unity, his leadership upheld the traditions of his ancestors, ensuring Tepiras remained a formidable power despite its modest size. Herdan Lerma, once a scholar of Chasabon, turned the destitute tribal region of Grossly-Nikan into the first experiment in collective revolutions. Inspired by radical new theories of equality, he rallied peasants, workers, and outcasts, uniting them under a banner of rebellion against the imperial nobility. Grossly-Nikan became not just a political entity, but an ideology, spreading quietly among the oppressed. King Cat, once the governor of the Lesamatian province, a region inhabited primarily by cat people, gained prominence through his defiance of Grand Duke Averio, revered by his subjects. He led a successful rebellion that culminated in the founding of the Kingdom of Catalan. As monarch, King Cat earned a reputation for benevolence and loyalty to his people. However, his rule was also marked by deep prejudice against the dog people. He openly declared that they were undeserving of human rights, a stance that defined interspecies relations during his reign and cast a shadow over his otherwise respected leadership. At the center of the Leonian province was Napoleon II of Taurus, ruler of the Taurus Dominion. Born in 960 in Taurus, Napoleon II was the son of Napoleon, transmigrated into this world after his father's defeat. Beginning life as a peasant in a different world, he relied on the knowledge of his former world to steadily climb to power, eventually seizing control of the fortress of Taurus. Amid the empire's turmoil, he declared independence and expanded his dominion by capturing the cities of Leonian province. Through these campaigns, Napoleon II transformed the Taurus dominion as one of the major powers of Serbia. Adentis Ignigra Phoenix, king of the Ignigra Kingdom. The origin of the Phoenix clan who ruled Ignigra can be traced back to ancient times. Long ago, a small and humble clan lived by the cliffs of the Chasabon mountain range. Their lives were simple until calamity struck. The clan was wiped out in a single night, leaving only one survivor. The young, fleeing into the depths of a cavern, stumbled upon something extraordinary, the lingering essence of the Great Phoenix, one of the 4 heavenly beasts. Long departed from this world, he absorbed its power and was reborn as the first Phoenix born, a man who carried the flame of the divine birth within him. From that moment, he laid the foundation of a new lineage, the Phoenix clan. Generations passed, and the clan's name grew brighter with each century. By the reign of Emperor Constantine XI, they had risen to the very height of nobility. Their prestige was unmatched, symbolized by the guardianship of one of the 13 imperial arms, the Phoenix Bow. As the reign of Grand Duke Averio began, the Phoenix clan of Ignigra grew disillusioned with the empire. Once among its most exalted noble houses, the Ignigra rejected imperial rule and proclaimed their own kingdom. These were the great players in the War of the Crown. Each sought to topple the empire, but each also sought mastery over Serbia itself, resulting in constant fighting between these factions. Under Averio's order, male loyalists prepared the army and set out to combat the rebels, eager to claim the bounty for themselves. Among them was the Holy Order of Battle Sages, one of the empire's most elite forces. The order traced its origins to the Laras Empire, the empire's former arch-enemy. They guarded the secret, the Larite, enchant technique, painful rituals that transform ordinary men into superhuman warriors, and crafted powerful weapons. Their leader, Grand Commander Giovanni Glazeheart, carried the Sword of Strength, one of 6 great swords of Serbia, hailing as the most destructive sword of the 6. The blade could level a hill and vaporize men by the hundreds. Not only the Swords of Strength, the Order also had in their possessions one of the imperial arms, the Dragon Collar, forged from the body of the great fire dragon Azamir. The collar granted the user monstrous strength and even allowed them to take the form of a dragon in battle. Its current holder was the vice commander of the Order, Sage Mobili. In 1000, the Phoenix Bow was stolen from the royal family of the Mithril Kingdom. Deprived of its most powerful deterrent, Mithril found itself vulnerable to external threats. Hearing the new tidings, Giovanni Glazeheart confidently led a strong battle-sieged army into Mithril. King Adetis Phoenix responded by sending most of his troops and asked his neighbor, the heirs of Moria, for help. The Phoenix clan and the heirs of Moria were not true allies, but both share a common enemy in the Empire. Because of this shared interest, High King Tandil agreed to send men to support Inigra. The two armies met near the Tower of Lilacs. The Order had 10,000 veteran battle sages who formed tight, disciplined ranks, their chain technique making them a force to reckon with in combat. Heavy armored, they struck with precision, resisting blows that would fail ordinary soldiers. Opposing them, Ignigra fielded 23,000 Ember infantry and 2,000 Muriorian archers. With the sound of the war horns, the infantry line surged forward, colliding with a roar of metal and shout. In fierce hand-to-hand combat, the battle sages' enchanted strength quickly gained them the upper hand. Despite being outnumbered, they steadily pushed back the Ember infantry. But then the Muriorian archers joined the fight. From their positions on elevated ground, they unleashed volleys of arrows that struck the battle sages with precision, slowing their advance and tipping the scales toward the defenders. The Ember infantry seized the moment, pressing forward and regaining lost ground. At this critical point, Sage Mobiri transformed into a massive dragon. He saw over the Ember infantry lines and descended upon the Muriorian archers. His flamed and aerial assault scattered the elves, neutralizing most of their support and causing heavy casualties. Seizing the opportunity, Giovanni Glazeheart charged into the fray. He tore through the front ranks of Ember infantry, killing hundreds of guards with each swing of the Sword of Strength. His path of destruction cut directly through the middle of the battlefield, pushing soldiers aside as he advanced relentlessly. Giovanni reached the rear where the Phoenix General Archelaus commanded the troops. With a single devastating strike of his sword, he cleaved the general and his bodyguard in half, destroying the enemy command and leaving the remaining Ember infantry in complete disarray. With their leader gone and their formation silent, the Ember infantry scattered. By the end of the battle, the Order lost half their battle sieges, but they brought down 80,000 of the Phoenix forces and 1,000 Elven archers. Irelax had been won, leaving Inigra weakened and vulnerable for the next campaign. 3 months later, the Order of Caesarea, one of the fellow loyalists, sent substantial reinforcements to the Order. With them, Giovanni advanced on Embergate, the Inigran capital. In the siege of Embergate, the attack boasted an army of 11,000 Caesarian men-at-arms, 8,000 battle sieges, headed by Sage Mobiri and Grand Commander Giovanni Glazehart. The defenders held 9,000 levies. Under King Adetus and his sons, reinforced by 2,000 Muriorian Elven Wardens, the best unit of Murior, commanded by Elkil the Moonless, one of the 5 Elven nobles of Murior. The siege of Embergate began with a direct assault on the eastern gate. Caesarian infantry stormed the walls, while the battle sieges hammered at the fortifications. A fierce struggle erupted across the battlement. As defenders fought to hold back the imperial tide, from the rampart, Elkil's Muriorian archers rained down volleys with deadly precision, cutting down attackers by the hundreds and stalling their advance. Mobili transformed into his dragon form. He destroyed the eastern gate with tooth and claw before taking to the skies, aiming to scatter the Elven archers. But this time, the elves were ready. Elkil, the commander, loosed an enchanted arrow that pierced Mobili's skull, killing him instantly. The beast crashed into the city streets, shaking the ground as the imperial army lost one of its most fearsome trump cards. Through the shattered gate, the battle sieges surged inside, and what followed was chaos. Street to street, wall to wall, the defenders and attackers clashed in brutal melee. Fire spread, smoke filled the alleys, as both sides fought desperately. Casualties began to mount at a rapid rate. In the midst of fighting, Giovanni Glazehart confronted King Adetus and his sons. In a vicious duel, Phoenix clan members were all massacred by the Grand Master. Yet the second Phoenix Fire inflicted grievous wounds on Giovanni, leaving him weakened. At that moment, the elves re-entered the battle. Their deadly precision once again cut down Imperial troops. Injured but undaunted, Giovanni fought his way toward the Elven lines, easily cleaving through the Wardens, who themselves were no slouches in his path. But Elkil met him head-on, holding him in place. Shrouded, Giovanni was struck by volleys from every side until his body was riddled with arrows. The commander of the Patricians, fell. His death breaking the last resolve of his warriors. While the Zarian infantry fled in panic, the remaining sages gathered in one place to make their last stand, choosing to go down with their leader. By noon, the fight had ended. The defenders of Ember stood victorious amidst the wreckage of a once resplendent city. Seeing Ignira broken and his strength spent, Erekiel deemed the Phoenix clan unfit as Muriel's ally. He withdrew his heirs, taking with him the Dragon Collar and the Sword of Strength. Leaderless and abandoned, Ignigra's citizens quickly surrendered to the Empire by the next spring. The Patricians at last found victory, yet the cost of this triumph was immense. The Order lost not only tens of thousands of hard-to-replenish battle sages, but also its greatest champion, Giovanni Glazeheart, and its most prized artifact, the Sword of Strength and the Dragon Collar. For centuries, the Order had never been this weak, and it would not be long before the other rebels took notice. Throughout the long history of the Empire of Trebizond, its vast military might had always been the main force used to subdue the masses, but alongside the sword, faith played an irreplaceable role in winning the hearts and obedience of the people. This balance ended during the regency of Grand Duke Averio of Caedros. Seeking to strengthen his control over the empire's wealth, Averio began confiscating church lands, taxing religious estates, and selling high offices to his supporters. These actions severely reduced the church's income and influence, angering the clergy. In response, Pope Eric XIII excommunicated both Averio and Emperor Esquina II in 997. Declaring them unworthy of divine blessing. The excommunication damaged the emperor's reputation and encouraged several provincial lords to break away from the empire. Averio retaliated by supporting a growing subfaction within the church. This group claimed that the emperor ruled by divine right and that loyalty to him was a sacred duty. The faith split into two opposing branches, the Orthodox Church, which remained loyal to the Pope and the old teachings, the Imperial Church, supported by Averio and the Imperial Court, recognized Emperor of Trebizond as the Pope. This division became known as the Great Schism. Tensions between the two sides quickly escalated. Averio ordered the seizure of Orthodox properties across the empire, and many bishops and priests were executed or driven into exile. Fearing for his safety, Pope Eric XIII relocated the church's headquarters to the remote northern island of Winterdiv, far from Averio's reach. From there, the Pope continued to oppose Aveiro through letters and decrees. Both sides threw insults at one another. Things began to escalate to a new level, starting with the Pope ordering the Emperor messenger to be flayed alive, and Aveiro responded by killing the church letter boy. In parallel with the ongoing beef with Aveiro, the Pope also started collecting tolls and taxing passing ships around the waters between Winterdeep and the city of Habad, which were traditionally controlled by the Hamabad Caliphate. This cut deeply into the Caliphate's profits and angered the Lord of Hamabad. When he voiced out his complaint toward the church, the Pope sent an assassin to kill him. His son discovered the culprit and retaliated soon after, sending his own assassin to Winterdeep. Pope Eric was killed during one of his outdoor visits in winter 1001. The life of a controversial figure who sparked the Great Schism had ended over some gold coins. Following his assassination, Cardinal Asco Profita was elected as Pope Asco IV. By then, the Sergian Church was permanently divided, its lands reduced, and its influence weakened. The conflict between the Empire and the rebel state of the Mithril Kingdom saw the Empire emerge victorious. With that victory, the Empire reclaimed a decent chunk of lost territories. Inspired by the Batasages' triumph, other loyalists began eyeing their rebellious neighbors, ready to throw down the towel with them. In the summer of 1002, one of the Empire's strongest loyalist states, the Archduchy of Luxemslavia, made its first move. The Archduchy, ruled by Archduke Joseph Barus Davide, owned vast swaths of land east of Nastunian province. Once a decorated general of the 6th Legion who had defended the northern border against the Ice Orc. Barus retired to his homeland after decades of service. Beloved by his people, he was voted as their supreme leader. He received the title of Archduke from Emperor Constant XI, thus legitimizing his rule. When rebellion spread across the continent, he raised an army of 12,500 imperial loyalists and marched against the nearby rebel city-state of Kushkran. Kushkran was defended by Nodil Adenheim, known to our searcher as the Siege Master. Born into poverty, his father was a drug addict, his mother a bar waitress. The boy escaped his house on the 9th birthday. His carriage was attacked by bandits. Everyone was slaughtered, but he was spared and adopted into the group. Growing up into a fine man, he transformed his gang into a disciplined mercenary company. His fame began when he and his company repelled 100,000 undead from the Iron Mountains. beneath the walls of Kushkran. For his merit, he was appointed the governor of the sea and became its protector. He went on to defend the fortress against countless adversaries, inadvertently earning the title of Siege Master. After Emperor Constant XI's death, Nordur secured the strip of land north of the Iron Mountain. His territory was a barren and poor place in comparison to the lands held by prestigious noble houses. As such, against Archduke Baruch's large army, he could muster only 7,000 men to defend Kushkran. Nordur has Kushkran prepared for the siege. The moat was widened. Hidden mines were buried along the main approach. Siege engines were built, aimed at the field in front of the fortress. By the end of the summer, Luxem's Slavian army reached Kushkran. And shortly after, the siege began. The attackers swarmed towards Kushkran, but the defenders were well prepared and confident. After several failed assaults and heavy losses, the Archduke had no choice but to call off the siege. The Loyalists retreated in humiliation. It was a total defeat for the Empire. The defenders had little time to savor their resounding victory. To the west, King Knut Zealous of the Mithril Kingdom saw his chance. With Kushkran weakened by siege, he declared war and launched a massive invasion. The Mithril Kingdom fielded 30,000 soldiers, heavily armed with mithril gears. Headed by Knut's three sons, Bjorn, Eric, and Eirik Jealous. To strengthen his ranks and counter Nordur, Knut hired the field mercenaries of the Brotherhood of the Moon, commanded by the Slatter, the man many called the God of War, whose fame was on par with the Siege Master. The Brotherhood added 20,000 veterans. In total, a whopping 50,000 men marched towards Kushkran. By late autumn of 1002, the Mithril Kingdom's army arrived before the walls of Kushkran. From the ramparts, Nordur and his weary garrison of fewer than 4,000 defenders looked down upon the sea of Mithril banners in trepidation. The Mithril troops began the assault by sending the regular soldiers. But Kushkran's defenders had prepared every inch of the wall. Boiling oil, falling stones, and hidden mines tore through the attackers. Within hours, the Mithril lines broke, leaving the slopes littered with corpses. Enraged by the failure, the second wave came under Knut's own sons, Eric and Bjorn, leading the elite contingent of the army, their armors simmering under the sun. Prior to the attack, the Slater offered to have the prince. However, their pride got the better of them. They mocked the mercenaries of the Brotherhood, insisting they could take the fortress on their own. As Eric led his men toward the main gate, a massive stone from Kushkran's catapult slammed straight into him, vaporizing his entire body. His brother Bjorn pressed on, furious, scaling the ladders under a hail of arrows. But as he reached the top, the defenders poured boiling oil from above. His armor turned into an oven. He fell screaming into the moat below, never to rise again. As the smoke settled, the Mithril camp fell silent. 2 royal princes were dead, and the fortress still stood. The eldest prince Jealous, desperate for victory, swallowed his pride and called upon Daslata and his Brotherhood of the Moon. The third wave came at dawn. This time, Nordur and what was left of his men finally made their march. The elite and battle-hardened Brotherhood scaled the walls and took over the towers with ease. While the gates were broken down after the repeated assault, the defenders fought valiantly. But outnumbered and outmatched, they ultimately succumbed to the attackers. The seemingly impregnable Kushkran had fallen, its master captured. The fall of Kushkran shocked the world. With its lands now under its control, the Mithril Kingdom rose to become the strongest of the rival states. Despite losing 2 sons in the siege, Knut's greed quickly overpowered his grief. He offered Nordur a pardon and even a noble title if he swore loyalty. Nordur smiled, agreed, and waited. A month later, he invited Eric Jealous, the last prince, into his office, stabbed him, looted his body, and vanished into the mountains. Realizing he'd been duped, Knut exploded with rage. Wanted posters for Nordur appeared in every city, and the king swore he would chase the man to the ends of the earth. In the end, though the victory at Kushkran briefly raised the Mithril Kingdom's power and prestige, it came at a terrible price: the death of all the king's sons. This single triumph would soon set off a chain of events that changed the kingdom's fate forever. Around the same time, Luxon Slavia attacked the fortress of Kushkran in central Serbia. Battles were also raging in the Far East. There in the frozen lands of northeastern Serbia, the infamous Cold Ones had risen once again. Long ago, the people of that region angered the Witch of Ice, while the 7 primordial witches, in a fury, she cursed them for all generations. The curse made their bodies emit a freezing aura. Wherever they went, winter followed. But it also gave them mastery over ice itself, and complete resistance to the cold. With these powers, they became known as the Cold Ones. They ruled the Northeast for centuries. There's no blanketing everything in its path. But when the Empire of Trezibon expanded northward, it broke their rule and forced them back to their ancestral citadel, Zioza, the Ice Castle. The Cold Ones came under the Empire's jurisdiction. Outside of their imperial duties, they kept to themselves. Once proud and warlike, the Cold Ones became calm and obedient, content to live quietly within their frozen homeland of Zioza. Now, with the Empire weakened, a young and fiery leader named Donny Crivon sought to reclaim the Cold Ones' lost glory. He united the Cold Ones under one banner, the Frozen Union, and launched an invasion against the Empire's border provinces. The Empire's response came from the Duchy of Rosendale, led by Duke Varosa Rosemary, ruler of the fortress Rosengard and the wealthy trade city of Unera. Unera was the heart of northern commerce, its river routes bringing riches that Rosendale could not afford to lose. In the summer of 1002, 30,000 Cold Ones besieged Unera. The garrison held firm and sent desperate pleas for help. Varosa answered with 30,000 legionnaires. In the Battle of Unera, the Cold Ones brought with them monstrous ice beasts, creatures they had tamed from the deepest depths of the northern glacier, where no ordinary human could ever reach. The beasts crashed into the front lines, tearing through a man with terrifying ease, while the Union's warriors froze and shattered foes with their chilling magic. Seeing the battle turn dire, Varosa gave the signal. From the back line, volleys of fire bottles arced through the sky and burst across the field, engulfing the frozen battlefield in a sea of flames. Meeting their greatest weakness, the Cold Ones' formation fell into chaos. Seizing the moment, Varosa led a countercharge, his blade cleaving two beasts and proved alike. As their comrades burned and fell, the Cold Ones' resolve wavered. Panic spread. and one by one they fled into the snow, leaving behind a field of ice and blood. Unera was saved as the Frozen Union was dealt its greatest defeat. Donnie was not one to give up easily. Over the next year, both sides fought bitterly. The border shifted and settlements changed hands many times. By summer 1003, Rosendale finally broke the stalemate. The Cold Ones were pushed all the way back to their homeland beneath the icy walls of Ziotza. It seemed as if Rosendale had finally subdued the plague that was the Cold Ones for good. However, that autumn, while Rosendale's forces were concentrated in Ziotza, the northern elves of Roma to the west suddenly invaded. They stormed the city of Unera, slaughtering most of its people and enslaving the survivors. Losing its northern stronghold, the Rosendale Dukedom was forced to give up the lands they gained from the Frozen Union and retreat to the south. The Frozen Union and Roma then joined forces and drove the exhausted loyalists back to Rosendale capital, Rosengard. There, Varosa made his last stand. In the first siege of Rosengard, the defenders fought bravely and repelled the attackers. But the duchy was left in ruins. Desperate, Varosa turned to his ally, the land of Mandio. Mandio's capital, Pigaton, was the oldest city in all Searcher. Founded by the first human sage, the pioneer of human civilization, it stood as the monument to knowledge and enlightenment. At its heart lay the Great Mandio Library, the largest archive on the continent. No one truly knew when the library was built. Even in the earliest records of mankind, it was already there. Some believed it was not made by human hands at all. Inside, millions of books and scrolls filled its endless halls, preserving tens of thousands of years of history from every race and kingdom. People whispered that the library held the knowledge of the universe itself, secrets so vast that even the wisest dare not uncover them all. Its governor, Grandmaster Leonor Liuwen has once been a man of great wisdom and integrity. But as the years passed, ambition began to cloud his heart, and whispers of greed crept into his thoughts. Still, when the Duchy of Rosendale called for aid, Liuwen answered. He sent 20,000 men to reinforce the loyalist army at Rosengard. In the second siege of Rosengard, the defenders were being overwhelmed by the firepower of the elven archers and the ice magic of the cold ones. Out of nowhere, Mandio forces hit the attackers on the side. Securing a Pyrrhic victory over the elves and the cold ones. But as Liuwen gazed upon the ruined city, something inside him broke. The voice of temptation that had haunted him for years finally took hold. In autumn 1004, after yet another victory against the Frozen Union in the third siege of Rosengard, Liuwen struck. Without warning, his reinforcements turned on their allies, claiming that Rosendale had secretly conspired with the Frozen Union to deceive the Emperor. Chaos erupted. The Rosendale soldiers, caught completely off guard, were cut down by the very men who had fought beside them. Duke Varosa and his entire family were slain. Within hours, Rosengard fell, not to invaders, but to betrayal. When the blood finally dried, Rosendale was no more. Its land swallowed whole by Mandio. But guilt soon consumed Liuwen. Realizing the horror of what he'd done, he sent a letter to the capital pleading for forgiveness. Instead, Grand Duke Averio denounced him as a traitor. Mandio was stripped of his titles and branded a rebel state. Meanwhile, to the south, the Kingdom of Catalan seized the opportunity. Capturing the stronghold of Seska from the Earldom of Caesarea in a swift campaign. By the end of 1004, the Empire had lost nearly all its eastern territories, consumed by rebellion, betrayal, and war. The once mighty realm was bleeding on every front, and the Great War of the Crown showed no sign of ending. In the west, a group of men and women stepped foot into the city of Luxemska. They were the Fellowship of the Virgin. 2 years ago, they departed from Scholasika, the stronghold of the western edge of the Empire, and crossed countless hostile land. 2 years later, they finally reached the imperial-controlled territory in central Serbia. Hearing the grave news from the east, the group hastened toward the residence of Archduke Joseph Barus Davide. Just as if all hopes had been lost for the Empire, the cogs of the world began to turn, spiraling into unknown